What do you think is the role, and how important is that role of the organic sector in the transition of agri-food systems?
Oh, I think the organic food sector really has a crucial role to play in managing us forward within planetary boundaries. I think people get sometimes blasé about the official UN statistics, which typically talk about agriculture when they say 23 or 24% of greenhouse gas emissions are agricultural emissions. And people forget that if we look at the whole value chain of the food system, including the forests that are destroyed to create the space to grow the soya bean, to feed the beef, to then transport that meat across half the planet to be able to consume. If we account for the full value chain, the full food system, and including, of course, the 30 odd percent of food that gets wasted in homes as well as on fields, if you account for all of that, then actually human food systems are between 47 and 53% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. So they are, in fact, the single largest piece of the puzzle of trying to solve for climate change, for climate breakdown. I should be particular. In addition to that, of course, food systems make use of between 70 and 90% of water, and water scarcities are hitting India, China, and many other parts of the world. In addition, food systems, as you probably recollect from the Global Nutrition Report, are also to our human lives most important, not just nutrition, but because today they have become the bearers of disease. The largest burden of disease is basically from our diets. That's quite staggering, considering that I'm considering other factors such as infectious diseases, and it's food systems that are causing most of the problems in terms of the cost to human health and the public cost. So, particularly in countries which can make a difference, where economic choices and policy choices are easier to implement because they are easier to manage, I think it's really behoves them, and I would include New Zealand amongst them. It really behoves the countries which have the ability and the fiscal space to recognize and respond to the realities of food systems. I think we really need to do that. And that solutions to climate change and water scarcity and human health will come from food systems. Organic food systems are the solution. When I say organic, I'm using it in the broadest sense. I'm sort of talking out this broad template of systems which include natural farming, which include organic farming. Natural farming itself is called different things in different places. It could be called regenerative farming in the US, and in Mexico it could be called natural farming in India, and so on. So I'm talking about the alternative food systems really have a lot to present and a lot to look to for solutions of these big problems.
How can the government support better the organic sector?
I think frankly, the first thing that needs to be done, you cannot manage what you do not measure, right? And firstly, I would say that the New Zealand government owes a responsibility to its citizens to measure organic food systems properly in terms of their overall value to society. So it's not just about per hectare productivity of single crops or per hectare productivity of farming in general, but we are talking about looking at impacts on soil quality, impacts on climate change, impacts on water, impacts on pollution, impacts on all kinds of factors which determine the quality of human lives. And these things can all be measured. So looking at a single metric like per hectare productivity of a single crop is actually looking at a very small piece of the puzzle when you're evaluating something as complex and as huge as the food system overall. So that's step one. Please measure this properly. Create holistic metrics, and they're available, right? 10 years ago when we met, I couldn't have said that to you with confidence. I couldn't have said hand on heart, oh, well, you've got everything you need, you can solve the problem. That wasn't the case. But today we have the Team for Agriculture and Food study. We have got more than 10 projects, massive ones, including one covering 750,000 farmers, natural farmers in India, which are being measured by these yardsticks. Today we have the yardsticks and the science and the economics that goes to create a proper representation of what is system A versus system B. So honestly, I think that's step one, measure things properly. After that, once you've measured it, you'll come to the conclusions that I think we're all aware of, which is that natural farming and organic farming systems do tend to produce better societal outcomes overall. Incentivize those systems, right? Why must you continue to incentivize systems that cause the problems which we are trying to solve, as against those systems which are solving the problems that we are trying to solve? So that incentive is not that easy to produce, because at the end of the day, it's about fiscal space. But countries which are well managed, closely managed, and where the policy frameworks are agile, like New Zealand, they do have that opportunity compared to other countries which are more difficult and very finely balanced. You know which one I'm referring to. Very finely balanced political circumstances, where 2 votes in the Senate and 10 votes in Congress can make a huge difference between swinging this way and that. You don't have that problem in New Zealand and a few other countries. So there is an opportunity.
How do you think we can lead?
So I think there are 3 layers of leadership that I'd like to point out. Right. So firstly, you have some weight in your organic sector. I know it's not very big. It's less than $750 million of total output, and about 58% from what I recollect seems to be exported. But let's say $425 million worth of exports of organic food are happening. Look at the opportunity here. This is already a $70-80 billion sector. And why would New Zealand, which is such a huge provider of food to the planet, especially dairy products, why would you have such a tiny share in the overall organic marketplace? Surely it should be the other way around. You ought to be punching above your weight in this situation. Now, to get there, of course, is a policy challenge. And so that's step 1, which is to recognize the policy challenge, and to recognize that you are in a position where you can drive it through the export direction, because there is a very rapidly increasing demand for healthy food and organic food and natural food around the world. So there is an opportunity in which needs that policy focus. The second thing is communication. I don't think enough has been done to communicate the message around natural and organic food being healthy food, good for the planet, good for people, good for our health. And there you need credible voices. You need trusted voices. Your own Prime Minister is a very trusted voice. And I'm sure you have got many others. I'm not singling her out because she's amazing, but there are lots of good, solid people within New Zealand who are trusted voices. Well, they should be heard. They should come out with what they probably are practicing already, but they're not preaching, if I may put it this way. There are a lot of people who are conscious about what they eat and how they eat, not necessarily talking about it. They should. This is the time. The third plank is actually technology, and exploring the alternatives and recognizing that you don't necessarily need very sophisticated technology to achieve these transitions, but you need communities, and you need simple solutions being explored locally and shared by communities of farmers.
What would you advise New Zealand organic sector to do? If you think about the growth of the sector, addressing some of the challenges, what would be the most important thing?
Well, I mean, it's easy for me as an outsider to say this and suggest this, and I think there's a lot of slip between the cup and the lip, as they say. But I would challenge my friends in New Zealand to see themselves in a position of opportunity. I would say that, look, your brand New Zealand is well recognized when it comes to dairy, any dairy product, whether it's meat or whether it's milk or butter or whatever it is. It's a well recognized brand. Why not do a brand-based re-strategizing of what it is that you're marketing under that brand? Why not make it basically sustainable food, organic food, natural food as the new brand, and leverage the brand New Zealand, leverage your popularity already amongst consumers. Consumers associate quality and richness and health with the foods that come from New Zealand. Leverage that reality, leverage that brand, and then see what you can do to reposition it. Because at the end of the day, consumers are also shifting in their attitudes. They're turning away from chemical laden and sort of traditional, conventionally farmed meat and vegetables and cereals, and that could potentially hit New Zealand negatively. So before that happens, I would say reposition New Zealand as actually a winner in the future race for providing natural farmed foods and organic foods. And I think there's an opportunity here, because if you look at the value, so Yes, 58% of the food is exported, but the remaining 42% of the organic food is eaten in New Zealand, right? So clearly there is a health impact in New Zealand, a water impact in New Zealand, a climate impact here, and so on and so forth. So there's every policy reason, so long as you do true cost accounting, for the government of New Zealand to actually support organic farming, because there are public benefits that are flowing to the people of New Zealand. Well, at least half of them are flowing here, right? The rest are flowing overseas with their exports. But if you can win that export war, if you can win that battle, then you will get some of the benefits through the export route as well, in terms of the financial flows.